In this video, I will go through how to make your IKEA Trådfri remotes really smart using Home Assistant. I will start with a proof of concept demo. Then I will go through shortly about the hardware used, and then I will go through the Home Assistant stuff.
The goal of the automation is to take a IKEA remote control and show how you can use it to control two different light groups using the Zigbee to MQTT integration in Home Assistant and a SMLIGHT Zigbee coordinator. The middle button switches between two different light groups, the ceiling and the corner in my living room. The up and down acts as to turn on and turn off mainly. You can also fade up and fade down, and you can also turn it on minimum level and switch from maximum level to minimum level in a click. You will also see which group that is selected with the LED on the remote itself. So clicking in the middle, if there is no light of the LED, it means that the corner group is lit when pressing the button up and down. We can fade down by holding the down button down. We can switch it off by clicking. You can also turn it on the minimum level by clicking down and by clicking up to max, and then if you are at max and you want to switch to min, just click up again. If you now click the middle button, you'll see that the LED will light up, and now I'm controlling the ceiling light instead. And I can switch back to the corner light, switch that off, switch back to the ceiling light and dim that down to a certain level, and then turn it off.
On the technology side, you will see for sure Home Assistant, and I'm using the 2410 version. I'm running it on a virtual machine so that I can utilize the add-ons features that are not possible if you use the Docker version of Home Assistant. Zigbee to MQTT that has been set up in Home Assistant, and my coordinator is the SMLIGHT SLZB-06. The IKEA gateway that I've been using for several years has limited functionality with Home Assistant. You can only capture what happens at the light level. You can't capture the events from the remote. It has awkward pairing, meaning that you must be within a few centimeters from the light bulb or from the gateway to pair. And it has USB power supply. The SMLIGHT SLZB-06 acts directly on events from the remote. So you can trigger on button clicks, long presses, etc. It's got an improved pair. You can pair it from wherever there is Zigbee connectivity. It has a PoE, power over Ethernet capability, so you can power it via the same network cable that you connected to your network via. You can connect it also via Wi-Fi. It has Bluetooth functionalities. It's inexpensive and awesome, but there is added complexity. The concepts in Home Assistant that we will see are groups for lights, input select to select among different groups of lights, and automations. In the demo, I showed you how the middle button changes which light group that we operate on with the automation. So these are the two light groups, and sorry for mixing Swedish and English here. So this is the group for the ceiling lights, and you can see that there are two different lights in that group, and there are two different lights in the other group as well. And we also have a input selector here, which just lists the two different names of the groups. So the groups that you had defined for the ceiling lights and for the corner lights, they are listed here in a select. If you go to the remote settings, if you use the Zigbee to MQTT as the integration, not the IKEA Trådfri, then you have an identity action you can take. So if I press the button here, it will flash the LED that you saw in the video. There's a setting that can be interesting. If you go to your Zigbee to MQTT settings, you see that there is also the exposures identity here, but if you switch to settings specific here, there is an identity timeout that I've set to 1 second. You can set it to 5 seconds if you want it to flash for 5 seconds, but I've set it to 1 second, so it just turns on the LED and turns it off again. There's also a legacy here that you should set to false according to the documentation. Moving over to the automation. There are several different triggers that I use that are all caused by the remote control. There's the toggle, which is the middle button, the toggle hold, if you keep it pressed down for 4 seconds, the brightness up click, the brightness up hold, and release. So these are the click, and the hold is when you start to dim up, and release is when you release to dim up, and the same thing for down. So moving down to the automation steps. I will now show you some of the triggers to the automation. First of all, I will show you how to flash the LED. I will also show you how I use the input selector in the automations to select which group to target, and I'll also show you the fade up or fade down action. Starting with the toggle click, there is just triggers when it gets a trigger ID toggle, and then it will use the cycle action on the group that on the input selector that you saw, so it will just swap to the next. If it comes to the last one, it will cycle back to the first one. After that, there's an if statement checking that if the value that is now the current value is set to the ceiling lights, in that case it will do a button press to the identify action on the remote. So that is how the LED starts to flash. When I click, every second time I click on the middle button. Moving to the next part of the automation is to see when I click up. So it's the same thing, up click, and then there's a condition that it will only act when it's on or off. So if it's on, if it's off, it will turn off to 100% or 1%, then depending on what time of day it is, and otherwise it will turn down to 1%. So here we see the YAML code. It might look a bit tricky. So let's start with the target ID to start with. So the target ID is the light dot, and then it includes the string of the name of the selected light group. So states.input_select .state. So that is either of the two names of the groups that was in the input select. So it will address that light group. So every second time you click the middle button, it will change to the one part of the group and the other. So the brightness percentage here, it's just that it takes 1 if the state attribute brightness of that exactly the same target. If that is above 250, it's at 1, otherwise it's at 100. So let's now look at the fade up. So if it's triggered by the up hold, then it will repeat until it is triggered by up release. So as long as the up hold is triggered, and then it will trigger until the up release is set, and then it will just fade up with a certain percentage here, 32%. And you see the same thing, light and state and input select as the entity ID. For this to work, your automation should be in the restart mode. You've seen how the same remote control can control two different light groups, and how you can get an indication of which light group is selected by utilizing the identify LED on the remote control. Thank you for watching.